Chapter 8 Boundaries and Your Friends. Marcia switched on the television, not even noticing which show was on. She was thinking about her phone call with her best friend Tammy. She had asked Tammy to go to a movie with her. Tammy had other plans for the evening. Once again, Marcia had taken the initiative. Once again, she was disappointed. Tammy never called out. Was this what friendship was supposed to be about? Friendship. The word conjures up images of intimacy, fondness, and a mutual drawing together of two people. Friends are symbols of how meaningful our lives have been. The saddest people on earth are those who, in their days with no relationships in which they are truly known and truly loved. Friendship can be a broad category. Most of the relationships mentioned in this book have friendship components. But for our purpose, let's define friendship as a non-romantic relationship that is attached based rather than function based. In other words, let's exclude relationships based on a common task, like work or ministry. Let's look at friendship as comprised of people we want to be around just for their sake, for their own sake. Boundary conflicts with friends come in all sizes and shapes. To understand the various issues, let's look at a few conflicts and how they can be resolved with boundaries. Conflict number 1. Compliant and compliant. Redundancy. In some ways, it was a great friendship. In other ways, it was awful. Sheen and Tim enjoyed the same sports, activities, and recreation. They went to the same church and liked the same restaurants, but they were just too nice to each other. Each one had difficulty saying no to the other. The realization of the problem came up one weekend when a whitewater rafting trip and a concert were scheduled on the same day. Sheen and Tim enjoyed both activities, but they couldn't do both. Sheen called Tim, suggesting they go rafting. Absolutely, answered his friend. However, unbeknownst to each other, neither Sheen nor Tim really wanted to go rafting. In their hearts of hearts, both men had been looking forward to going to the concert. Halfway down the river, Sheen and Tim got honest with each other. Tired and wet, Tim blurted out, "It was your big idea to come on this trip." "Tim," Sheen said with surprise, "I thought you wanted to go rafting." "Oh no, since you called me, I figured that's what you wanted, old buddy." He continued ruefully, "Maybe it's time we stopped being so nice to each other." The result of two compliant interacting in that neither does what he really wants. Each is so afraid of telling the other the truth that neither ever does. Let's apply a boundary checklist to this conflict. This checklist of questions will not only help you locate where you are in setting boundaries, but also show you how to get where you want to go. Number 1, what are the symptoms? One symptom of compliance conflict is dissatisfaction, a sense that you allowed something you shouldn't have. Number 2, what are the roots? Compliance come from backgrounds where they had to avoid saying no to keep others happy. Since their roots are similar, it's often hard for two compliant people to help each other. Number 3, what is the boundary conflict? Compliant people politely deny their own boundaries to keep the peace. Number 4, who needs to take ownership? Each compliant needs to take responsibility for his or her attempts to appease or please the other. Sheen and Tim both need to admit that they each control the other by being nice. Number 5, what do they need? Compliant people need to have supportive relationships to plug into, be they support groups, small groups, or counselors. Their fear of hurting the other person makes it difficult for them to set boundaries on their own. How do they begin? That's number 6. Both compliants practice setting limits on trivial things. They may begin with being honest about things like tastes in restaurants, church liturgies, music, and the like. How do they set boundaries with each other? Sheen and Tim talk with each other face to face, finally telling the truth and revealing limits they'd like to start setting. They commit themselves to better boundaries with each other. Number 8, what happens next? Sheen and Tim may have to admit that their interests are not as similar as they had thought. They may need to separate more from each other. Having different friends for different activities is no blot on the relationship. It might help their friendship in the long run. Conflict number 2, compliant aggressive controller. Compliant/aggressive controller. The compliant/aggressive controller conflict, the most identifiable of friendship conflicts, has classic symptoms. The compliant feels intimidated and inferior in the relationship. The aggressive controller feels irritated at being pestered by the compliant. Well, all right, if you insist, is a catchphrase of the compliant. Usually the aggressive controller is insisting on using some of the compliant's time, talents, or treasures. The aggressive controller has no problem demanding what she wants. Sometimes she just takes what she wants without asking. I needed it is enough reason for the aggressive controller to help herself to whatever the compliant has, be it car keys, a cup of sugar, or 3 hours of time. Since the compliant is usually unhappy in this relationship, he is the one who needs to take the action. Let's put this relationship through the boundary checklist. Number 1, what are the symptoms? The compliant feels controlled and resentful. The aggressive controller feels good, except she doesn't like to be pestered. Number 2, what are the roots? The compliant probably grew up in a family who taught him to avoid conflict rather than embrace it. The aggressive controller never received training in delaying gratification and in taking responsibility for herself or himself. What is the boundary conflict? Number 3. Two specific boundary conflicts that are the inability of the compliant to set clear limits with his friend and the inability of the aggressive controller to respect the compliant's limits. Number 4, who needs to take ownership? The compliant needs to see that he isn't the victim of the aggressive controller. He is volunteering his power to his friend on a silver platter. Giving up his power is his way of controlling his friend. The compliant controller controls the aggressive controller by pleasing her, hoping it will appease her and cause her to change her behavior. The aggressive controller needs to own that she has difficulty listening to no and accepting the limits of others. She needs to take responsibility for her need to control her friend. Number 5. What is needed? The unhappier one in the friendship, the compliant, needs to plug into a supportive group of people to help him with his boundary conflict. Number 6. How do they begin? In preparation for confronting his friend, the compliant needs to practice setting limits in his support group. The aggressive controller could really benefit from honest feedback from loving friends on how she runs over people and how she can learn to respect the limits of others. Number 7. How do they set boundaries? The compliant applies biblical principles to his friendship. See Matthew 18. He confronts his friend on her control and intimidation. He tells her that the next time she tries to control him, he will leave. He does not attempt to control her. Confrontation isn't an ultimatum meant to rob her from her choices. He sets limits to her to let her know that her control hurts him and wounds their friendship. Such limits protect the compliant from further hurt. The aggressive controller can become angry or intimidating as she wants, but the compliant won't be around to get hurt. He will be set out of the room, the house, or the friendship until it's safe to come back. The aggressive controllers experience the consequences of her actions. Not having her friend around may force her to miss the attachment, and she can begin to take responsibility for the control that ran off her friend. Number 8. Now what? At this point, if both friends are open, you can renegotiate the friendship. They can set new ground rules, such as I'll stop pestering if you'll stop being critical, and build a new friendship. Conflict number 3. Compliant/manipulative controller. Kathy, I'm in a real jam, and you're the only one I can depend on to help me out. I can't get a babysitter for the kids, and I have this church meeting. Kathy listened to the plight of her friend, Sharon. It was the usual story. Sharon neglected to plan for events, to call ahead for sitters. She often called Kathy to help out in these self-induced emergencies. Kathy hated being stuck in this position. Sharon didn't do it on purpose, and she needed her for a good cause. But Kathy still felt used and exploited. What was she to do? Many friendships are stuck in this interaction between compliance and manipulative controllers. Why do we call Sharon controlling? She's not consciously trying to manipulate her friend. However, no matter what her good intentions are, when she's in a jam, Sharon uses her friendship. She takes them for granted, thinking that they shouldn't mind doing a friend a favor. Her friends go along saying, well, that's just Sharon. They're Ella. They stifle their resentment. Let's run this conflict through her boundary checklist. Number 1. What are the symptoms? The compliant, Kathy, feels resentment at the manipulative controller's, Sharon, last-minute request. Kathy feels as though her friendship is being taken for granted. She begins to avoid her friend. Number 2. What are the roots? Sharon's parents rescued her from every jam, from typing term papers at 3 a.m. to lending her money when she was well into her 30s. She lived in a very forgiving universe. where nice people would always help her out. She never had to face her own irresponsibility and lack of discipline and planning. As a child, Kathy didn't like her mother's hurt look when she said no. She grew up afraid of hurting others by setting boundaries. Kathy would do anything to avoid conflict with friends, especially with Sharon. Number 3, what is the boundary conflict? Sharon doesn't plan ahead and take responsibility for her schedule. When responsibility gets away from her, she calls out to the nearest compliant for help, and Kathy comes running. Number 4, who needs to take ownership? Kathy, the motivated party in this conflict, sees how her never-ending yes contributes to Sharon's illusion that she doesn't ever have to plan ahead. Kathy needs to stop feeling like a victim and take responsibility for saying no. Number 5, what does she need? Kathy needs to connect with others who will support her as she looks at the boundary issues between her and her friend. Number 6, how does she begin? Kathy practices saying no with supportive friends. In a supportive atmosphere, she learns to disagree, to state her opinion, and to confront. They will pray for strength and guidance in this relationship. Number 7, how does she set boundaries? At their next lunch, Kathy tells Sharon about her friend feelings of being used and taken advantage of. She explains how she'd like a more mutual friendship. Then she lets her friend know that she won't be taking any more emergency babysitting jobs. Sharon, unaware of how she was hurting her friend, is genuinely sorry about the problem. She begins to take more responsibility for her schedule. After a few futile attempts to get Kathy to babysit at the last minute and having to miss a few important meetings, she starts planning for events a week or two ahead of time. What happens next? The friendship grows and deepens. Over time, Kathy and Sharon laugh over the conflict that actually brought them closer. Conflict number 4, compliant/non-responsive. Remember the Marcia-Tammy friendship at the beginning of this chapter? One friend doing all the work and the other coasting illustrates the compliant/non-responsive conflict. One party feels frustrated and resentful. The other wonders what the problem is. Marcia sensed that the friendship wasn't as important as to Tammy as it was to her. Let's analyze this situation. Number 1, what are the symptoms? Marcia feels depressed, resentful, and unimportant. Tammy, however, may feel guilty or overwhelmed by her friend's need for demands. Number 2, what are the roots? Marcia always feared that if she didn't control her important attachments by doing all the work, she'd be abandoned. So she became a Martha to everyone else's Mary, a worker instead of a lover. Reference Luke verse 10, Luke 10, verse 38 to 42. Tammy has never had to work hard for friendship, always popular and in demand. She has passively taken from important friendships. She has never lost anyone by not being responsive. In fact, they work harder to keep her around. Number 3, what is the boundary conflict? There could be 2 boundary conflicts here. First, Marcia takes on too much responsibility for her friendship. She's not letting her friends bear her own load. Galatians 6 verse 5. Second, Tammy doesn't take enough responsibility for the friendship. She knows that Marcia will come up with activities from which she can pick and choose. Why work when someone else will? Number 4, who needs to take ownership? Marcia needs to take responsibility for making it too easy for Tammy to do nothing. She sees that her attempt to plan, call, and do all the work are disguised attempts to control love. Number 5, what do they need? Both women need support from other friends. They can't look objectively at this problem without a relationship or two of unconditional love around them. Number 6, how do they begin? Marcia practices setting limits with supportive friends. She realizes that she will still have friendships in which each friend carries her own weight if she and Tammy break off their friendship. Number 7, how do they set boundaries? Marcia tells Tammy about her feelings and informs her that she will need to take equal responsibility for their friendship in the future. In other words, after Marcia calls, she won't call again until Tammy does. Marcia hopes that Tammy will miss her and begin calling. If worst comes to worst and the friendship atrophies due to Tammy's unresponsiveness, Marcia has gained something. She has learned it wasn't a mutual connection in the first place. Now she can grieve, get over it, and move on to find real friends. Number 8, what happens next? The mini crisis changes the character of the friendship permanently. And it either exposes it for a non-relationship or it provides soil for the rebuilding of a better one.